Welcome to NasStars, the NasStar Podcast, bringing you the conversations you want to hear from the front line of tech news.
Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the NasStars. Could also be subtitled episode 30 of the ModPod, but we are now rebranded under the Nasstar banner. So welcome to the new look, new feel. Very familiar format for anybody who's been listening before. Today's guests, we have Krysia Jones, who is Sales Support Manager, and an old face, I don't mean that in a rude way, Rich Tolley, Senior Solution Architect. Thank you both for joining today. Our first our topics for today are the energy crisis and the effect it's actually going to have on the tech industry and business in general. And the second one is as customers move away, not customers, as the businesses move away from telephony-based contact centers, are we actually getting a lesser service through the use of chatbots and chat? So 2 topics. We've got a little bit of over half an hour to fill. So let's crack on with topic number 1. Very topical at the moment, energy crisis. Obviously, the price of energy is going up and up and up and up. Really wanted to explore the impact of that on businesses. You know, we hear a lot about potentially the small businesses, potentially the crafts, all that sort of stuff, not being able to afford their energy bills. Get that completely. Really wanted to look at more sort of the industry side, how that's going to affect people. Will they be able to afford to run offices? What's going to happen? How do you get around that? How do you mitigate it? And also potentially what happens to the cloud providers? So there's the topic. Let's go. What do we think? I mean, it's getting pretty expensive, right? People are seeing huge hundreds of % increases in their bills.
Yeah, but they haven't really explained to us completely why it keeps going up and why these energy companies are still making so much profit, yet we're still having to pay so much more. Not just people, you know, not just the humans on the ground, but the companies and everyone else. There's so many small companies I've seen already on the news that are just going under and having to shut up doors because they can't afford to keep running.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that struck me the other day was if you're running an office, right? Typical office, yeah, you might have 50 people in it, 7,500, whatever it is, a couple of hundred. You've got to power that. You've got the air conditioning, you've got the lights, you've got the clean, you know, all of that sort of stuff, all the equipment that's going on. That's going to be quite a big chunk of energy that you're consuming. I wonder whether or not this is going to force businesses down a much more permanent work from home route.
You know, that's the elephant in the room for me is, you know, you've got businesses versus, you know, people, their employees. You know, people are probably going to be sat at home thinking, right, when winter comes, my office is only down the road. If that's such a luxury for them, I'm going to save my costs by traveling into the office. But what happens if your business turns around, your employer turns around to you and says, well, actually, we're going to sell the office because we need to look after our costs for energy. So, you know, does that mean that they're going to pay their employers more to cover their increased costs at home? Or
well, actually, wasn't that some of the advice that came out from government a little while ago about people should go into their offices to keep warm?
Yeah.
Which
that as well as jumping jacks,
bonkers, and buses.
Yeah, and buses.
Ways that would work, though. I mean, for example, we've got storage heaters at home, so it makes no difference if I go into the office or not. The storage heaters are still going to pump the heat out in the morning. You know, so in respects to some of us with electric only, that's not gonna cure the problem, is it? You know.
No. So my you know, I guess really, you know, if you think back to the offices that we've got, right? Again, mostly that they're being heated or whatever it is whilst we're not there, you know, at least to a basic extent. But if you do get to the point where actually your energy bill for the office has gone up 500, 600, 700%, that's going to be make or break for an awful lot of organisations.
Yeah.
If you go from an energy bill per month of a couple of grand to 20 grand, that's a huge impact. And so, one of the things that's, because all of these weird things sort of bounce through my mind, usually at the middle of the night, but, is it going to be more cost effective for businesses to go, actually, do you know what, I'll chuck you all a bit of money to just work from home and we won't have the office?
I think it is going to come to that. I mean, NasStar personally, we own and rent certain offices, but the ones that we rent, I think we've already got rid of a few anyway.
Yeah.
Is this going to happen for a lot of other businesses? Why would you rent a building or a property if you don't need to, essentially? If all of your team can work from home, which COVID has quite capably proved that we all can, why would you have that extra expense if you don't need to have it?
Yeah.
I think it's a proper dilemma as well, though, for businesses, because like you've just said there, Pete, do you throw your employees a little bit extra just to cover their living costs, or do you run the risk that they're gonna not look elsewhere to increase their income with another job in another business? Do you even risk that? I personally say, yeah, you should, but I'd like to get a little bit more money, but never mind.
This isn't a performance review, all right?
No, exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know the exact costs for running an office, but it gets pretty damned expensive, right? So in actually shutting your office and getting rid of that cost completely, it makes more sense in my mind to actually just say, right, yeah, support your workforce in doing that. Obviously, there's going to be sort of certain industries, manufacturing and medical and all sorts of stuff. You can't take that home, right?
No.
I've no idea what's going to happen to all that kind of stuff. But the other thing that sort of crossed my mind, and this is a real sort of, ooh, not sure about that. Amazon, Microsoft, massive data centers. Google, it's like,
Clearly
yes, they
because of
make a
their
lot of money,
services. Yeah.
but the cost of laying on those, those data centers. I mean, the Microsoft data centers, I'm not so familiar with the other two, are absolutely enormous.
Yeah, they're like a planet on their own, aren't they?
Yeah.
And there's multiple ones in each geography to be considered a data center. And you just think that's only going to end one way, with the price of cloud services going up, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not too sure, to be honest with you, with the likes of Microsoft and Amazon. I mean, if it's a prolonged energy crisis, then yeah, I think you'll probably start to see price increases from the likes of Microsoft and Amazon, the big players in the market. I think for the short term, I think they've got enough fat in their margins to be able to cover that. I think where the problem actually is your smaller hosting companies, the ones that basically just provide the rack space, the power, the air conditioning, and all that sort of good stuff, where it's going to hit hardest. More than likely, what you'll enter into is a long-term contract with a data center as an organization to host your servers in. You'll sign a contract that includes energy costs more than likely and all that sort of stuff for a fixed term. The ones that are going to get hit are the actual hosting companies themselves. At which point do they just turn around and say, well, sorry, we're going to go under, the contract's worth nothing. What does that customer then do? Does that push them into using Microsoft and then increase their costs? Does it have a knock-on effect and put them out of business? It could be catastrophic for those small to medium-sized organizations that don't want to pay the premium for Amazon and Microsoft hosting services.
Yeah, and I'd be surprised, I think, if the giants, if we call them the giants, haven't got some sort of sustainable energy, options being sort of built into, I mean, we've got a massive data center, right? Fill the roof with solar panels and stuff. cover your car park with solar panels. It's, there's got to be things that they can do.
Should be doing, really, not just data centers. That is something that every business for the last sort of 5 to 10 years should have been looking at, is renewable energy sourcing for yourself, to cover your own back, regardless of what the rest of the world's doing.
We've had to power up coal-powered power stations. That's how bad it's getting.
And we really don't want to do that.
No, but
knocked most of them down.
but there's a thing, isn't there? The power of one, in the sense that if you do your bit, but I think there's going to come a crunch point at some point soon where the large energy companies, the last thing they actually want anybody to do is generate their own.
Absolutely.
Because if everybody generated their own, they haven't got a business.
Yep. That's why they make it so hard for everyone to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want solar panels, you have to sell it back to a company. You can't just generate it for your own use.
But if you put a battery in.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, just been down that route. It's actually, but it is, and I think this is quite this whole energy thing. I think we're on a really difficult road at the moment because, as we were saying just before we started recording this, there's an area of Greater London where the data centers are so big that they are consuming the power that the new housing can't get enough power to be able to actually let people in to live in, which is absolutely crackers. So I don't know what the answer is to this energy thing, but I think it's going to have, if it stays high, it's going to have a really big impact, I think, in the way that we work and the way that we live.
It's starting to show already, isn't it? That impact with the high street shops closing down, and it's affecting those smaller businesses. We're pushing more and more people to shop at Amazon and things like that. So, that takes people away from the high street, thus damaging the economy more, and the knock-on effect throughout that. And I think the only alternative is to look at alternative ways of generating that energy. And though if those energy companies go bust, then so be it. As a result, if we don't all become more self-sufficient in that respect and more able to manage our own energy, then where is it going to lead to?
So
the world can't stop.
No, exactly. But so what can businesses do? What do we think businesses can do? Because is there any way that the tech world can help out and ease this pain? Is it actually, no, suck it up, that's the way it is? There's got to be something that can be done.
I mean, personally, for me, I'm no authority to speak on this type of stuff at all. But I mean, it's
none of us are, mate. Don't worry.
Well, no, yeah, but I mean, you look at your Amazons and your Microsofts and stuff. Do they see this as an opportunity? If it isn't a prolonged thing that goes on for years and years and years, do they even potentially look to lower their costs? Because of these small businesses that are struggling with energy costs and things like that, they might be looking at those Microsoft licenses and Amazon hosting costs and things like that and thinking, I can't afford to pay that. My business is going to go under. Rather the business go under, would Microsoft not want to retain their business? Maybe lowering costs might be the way to go for those giants, as we call them. I don't know, just spitball in there.
Not only that, energy costs, and like everything, the economy never stays the same for very long. We've had ups and downs before. Admittedly, this is probably one of the worst ups and downs we've had in 40, 50 years. But it never stays that high. It will always be fluid. So I don't think it will last forever. They're just making it really, really hard for everyone right now. I mean, what's happening in Russia really isn't helping. But, it won't stay like this forever. It didn't in the 80s. It all moved on and we all got electric again and everything was fine. But I agree with what you're saying. If companies reduce their costs, surely more people could use it, therefore giving them more income overall.
Yeah.
But I think there is a massive opportunity for IT companies especially to look at the problem and say, how do we fix this? Because it's a time for innovation, right?
Well, I wonder whether or not. So just down the road from me here, we've got a sort of a little commercial area because I live in the middle of nowhere, and we've got a little commercial area, and it does make you wonder whether or not actually the things like the WeWorks and places like that, whether or not you sort of have an office for this village and an office for that thing, and rather than just having it as big locations in the in the cities, actually you just have little hubs here which are the warm hubs or whatever they're calling, for people to stay.
There was an article I was reading the other day, Pete, actually, that said that there's been a massive increase in appetite for people not to actually work at home, but to move to organisations that have office locations close to their home.
Yeah.
So that they've got the option then. So, I think that type of thing, shared office environments and stuff like that, even if it's not owned by the business, but provided and paid for by the people that go and use it, I think that's a great shout and a suggestion. I mean, I've looked into that type of thing in the past because my nearest office is an hour and a half drive away. So I'm stuck at home pretty much all the time anyway. But for me, I'll stick a couple of pairs of socks and a coat on and I'll be all right, you know what I mean? But I know other people aren't, But no, I think shared office spaces is probably one way to go. But like you've said there, Krysia, I think it's a massive opportunity for IT and tech companies to maybe lead the way in terms of initiatives, in terms of producing those alternatives. I mean, like I said a little bit earlier in the call, the fact that we're firing up coal-powered power stations, it's madness. I think the UK provides 20% of its own energy, and then the rest of it comes from Europe. We've had a fire on one of the lines that actually feeds us from Europe as well, so that's not helping. But I mean, we're closing down nuclear power stations around the country by, I think, the end of this decade.
Yeah.
We're only building one to replace those ones that we're tearing down. Where's the government initiative to solve this problem? I just don't get it.
Well,
I was talking to my good.
Don't most of the initiatives come from the private sector anyway? Don't rely on the government to come up with the answers, because they very rarely do. It's private industry that comes up with it. People like Elon Musk that come up with those answers.
Yeah, but I was talking to my good lady earlier on this morning, and she said that Netherlands is apparently very nearly 100% wind power now, and soon they're going to start exporting it to us. So, I know we're surrounded by sea, yes, right? Which it gets quite windy out there.
Supposedly, and I might be wrong on this, I think we've had the least windiest year since like the 1960s or something. Now add that on to everything else that's going on. It's
quite sad when you drive around and you see the massive windmills and they're sort of like the wind turbines, and they're sort of sat there going, it's like, oh, that's kind of wrong, isn't it? It's like you should be spinning.
Well, down in Bournemouth, we were supposed to have, there was planning meetings, all sorts, to have a wind farm put out just beyond Bournemouth Pier. So just in the channel almost. So many people went against it, saying, oh, I don't want to look at that out my window. And it's like, it's not about what you want to look at. And to be fair, they're not that ugly, but it's about the fact that we need to generate some energy. And if we don't, where are they going to go? They have to go somewhere. You can't just put them in an ugly part of England. They have to go where you need them, where the wind is best for them. And we're already exporting oil from just off Bournemouth Pier, so why can't we have wind turbines? Surely that's less harmful.
Yeah, well, maybe these big giants need to have a look at it and go, actually, do you know what? Yeah, we're going to start getting into mass energy production. Yeah. Not just to cover our data centers, but to push back into the grid.
Yeah. I mean, look what's happened with electric cars, all electric vehicles. There are some new players coming on board now, things like that. I think is it Polestar? It's one of those companies. Yeah. The different car manufacturers are coming up with ways of making these electric vehicles that other car manufacturers that are normally combustion engines couldn't do. So the same could reasonably happen within the power industry.
And you never know, if they do that as well, there could be sort of, tax reductions or whatever for them. Oh, if they actually pay them anyway. Sorry.
Maybe they'll power themselves
Now you get
first.
right. That's it. That's going to have to go through scrutineering now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before we release this one.
Yeah, they
We've
power
mentioned
their
Russian
own-
and taxes.
Oh God, I know. They'd power their own industry first, and then it would get moved
Yeah.
on to everyone else.
Yeah.
You know, but that what if they can do it, then what stops everyone else doing it?
Yeah. Oh dear, I don't know. It's hard to see. I mean, I do think this is going to go on for quite a while, because whilst energy prices tend to go up, they tend not to come down that rapidly, regardless of what the increase was caused by. So I think, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting sort of 18 months to 2 years. I don't know where the balance lies, but
I think what people are forgetting as well is that the power going up isn't just affecting our electric bills for businesses and for homes. It's affecting food, it's affecting the cost of water, because water needs electricity to clean it. It's affecting the cost of literally everything. On the news yesterday, they were saying that 10 pence is being added to loaves of bread and pints of milk every week. And that 10 pence on a basic item that you need to feed your family on is ridiculous every single week for the last 6 to 8 weeks, and that's going to carry on until this is done because of the amount of power needed to produce those items.
well, this has turned into a highly depressing call, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Flipping heck.
Doesn't just affect one thing though.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. I mean, but business is not just people sat in offices, right? So we know that.
Yeah.
Gosh, I reckon that's a suitably low note on which to on which to move to the next topic.
At least
which
it's
is
not as
mental
bad
health.
as yeah. At least it's not as bad as Germany. Let's just say, where they've actually got potentials of rolling blackouts being scheduled and stuff, because they are literally short on energy.
They are literally relying on Russia to provide that energy, and that's just been turned off.
Yeah.
So,
But because they were making massive leaps into the self-sustainability area beforehand. So, but obviously, if you still have that legacy dependency on that because you're making your progress but not there, then someone pulls that rug from you, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Everyone should have listened to Nikola Tesla and gone with the energy idea that those energy towers could work. Who knows? No one will ever know because no one's allowed to try it, right? So
Right, tiny piece from me.
No,
just make sure
do this.
Make sure that your generators are topped up in your data centers. You know what I mean, and you've got your UPS batteries and they're all working and under support cover. You know what I mean, because I think you're gonna need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember doing my homework by torchlight. So. Right. Shall we move on to topic number 2 then?
Yeah.
So to introduce the second topic of this podcast, we're going to be talking about: do you, or do people, organizations, whatever it might be, suffer a lesser level of customer service when moving away from a telephony-based contact center to something like an IM chat-based contact center, social media, whatever it might be? What do we think?
I think it depends maybe on the business, and it depends on the users of that business. If you're running something like ASOS for fashion, most of your users are going to be young people. Most of them are used to chatbots and social media based service and wouldn't likely ring someone up. If you're running a company like an IT company like ourselves, we've still got an awful lot of users that like to ring people up and have that human contact. I think there's maybe a 50-50 split in that.
Yeah, I think there's 2 parts to it. I think you're absolutely right about whether or not people want to call up or whether or not they're happy with the newer level or the newer ways of interacting. Me personally, I hate phoning a contact center. I really do. The fact you sit there with that absolutely god awful music which never plays properly, fades in and out of loudness, that you then listen to for 20 something minutes whilst your call is important and you're going up the queue and all that sort of stuff, that actually really gets on my wick, that especially your call's important. Well, if it's important, you'd have bleeding answered it by now, wouldn't
You've
you?
obviously never used a contact center that I've deployed, Pete. You know what I mean? Because you wouldn't have those
No,
types
because
of
I
issues.
messaged it instead. But I do actually, I genuinely find that really, actually, if you listen to all of these podcasts back, I'm just an angry old bloke these days. But I do find I struggle with that sort of that queuing type mentality now. So I personally, I really like the chat based stuff. I'm not so much of the social media. I've not got so much sort of like experience of having used that, but just the ability to sit here doing some work. I've got a document going on or whatever it is. Oh, by the way, actually, I just need to. Can I just have a look at my policy? I need to change it and just have that going in the background. That is so much more convenient for me. I think the key to do you get a lesser service comes down to the culture of the company you're contacting, I think.
And how they manage those chatbots and whether they are automated or there's an actual human answering those questions.
And that's important too, because we've all been on the chats where you sort of go through, hi, I'm David. No, you're not. You're quite clearly an automated bot. It's like if you're putting me through to a chat bot to work out where you need to go, just be truthful. Don't try and pretend that you're a human being.
You know, I think a lot of this, and without sounding ageist, for example, my father, who is 75, will only phone people up. He will only phone BT to sort his phone bill out. He will not go online and do it because he gets far too confused doing it that way. And he'd rather talk to a human for 4 hours and bore the hell out of them. But, you know, I think people just love to be able to have that human contact, especially since COVID, where a lot of us didn't have any contact for quite a while. And I think people just like to go, oh, hi, you're a human. Well, how are you? What have you been up to? Whereas with the chatbot, well, clearly, you know, you're not going to get that level of conversation.
Okay, so I'm an old angry man now who doesn't like social contact.
Victor Meldrew.
491. On the sorry, that came out of nowhere. I just didn't have a dog next to me to pick up. I mean, I think we're at a tricky spot, to be honest with you, in terms of where we are in society, because, you know, those of us that are, I'm not going to try and be ageist here, but those of us that are below the age of 55, maybe I'd like to say, you know, we're sort of either using technology quite early on in their work lives, whatever it might be. So we're more au fait to, you know, using that text-based chat mechanism, whatever it is. And then certainly the more younger people, definitely 100% are more going to lean towards using social media based contact centers, text based contact centers, this, that, and the other. And I do think that the older people in society are more than likely going to want to speak to someone on the phone. I think, you know, it's a real sort of midpoint for those providing those services. You know, 100 years in the future, you probably won't even have the option of phoning someone. Telephone numbers won't even
the
exist.
planet will have melted into itself.
Well, yeah, there is that. Yeah.
That's jolly. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah.
We're going to need counselling after this. People go, thanks very much. I'm not going to listen to the rest of your podcast because, quite frankly, it's not worth living.
Depressing as hell. I again, you know, I've worked with computers and been in IT all my life, even as a whippersnapper, you know, setting bloody IRQs on computer games and stuff like that and whatnot, you know. But me, myself, sometimes I find I need to speak to someone. What I need to speak about is too complex to be explained over a chat message. And one of my major frustrations is the fact that some companies, not naming any names, will hide their contact numbers anywhere. And basically, you just end up phoning around where you can, off old forums, whatever it might be, to actually be able to speak to someone. So I do think it's dependent on what you actually want to have a conversation about. You and me both know, Pete, and no doubt, Krysia, you've seen this in the past as well. When you want to speak to someone, a colleague, about something, and if it's a complex issue, you'll more than say, it's easier to speak, it's easier to talk, let's have a chat.
Pick the phone up and do it a lot, even with my team. You know, it's like, if you can't explain it over Teams Messenger, then I'll call you, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think, give it another 20 years, next generation, things will have changed again tremendously.
Well, it's yeah, and again, there's I guess there's a couple of parts to it. One is we did a podcast about this a little while ago, about humans becoming the premium service.
Yeah.
So you go through the bots, you go to that, and eventually you get to a human, and so you become almost like the absolute. That's it. That's your ultimate goal. But you look at chatbots and the transcription services that are going on, all the developments that are happening around that, and you tie that into I don't know if you've seen the clip where the Google Assistant makes an appointment at a restaurant, and there's another at a hair salon. The person basically just turns around and says, "I'll make me an appointment at the hairdressers for Friday at 4:00," and it puts in the phone call, and the quality of the voice is absolutely astonishing, to the point where they've even gone to they put in artificial as part of it, and the people on the other end of the phone don't seem to realize that they're talking to a machine. It's the Turing test. But if we get that level of chat bot type thing, I think it will make an interesting difference, because I think what we've got at the moment is I'm going to chat to somebody and there's a human answering it at the other end, and that's fine. I think where you get the chat bot and then it sort of asks you ridiculous questions, as we said at the beginning, where it's quite clearly not a human. I think it's one of those things, isn't it? If you don't do it, or do it amazingly well.
Yeah, don't half-heartedly do anything.
Yeah,
100% or nothing.
Yeah, but I do think it will shift, and I think as the generations move through, that need for the telephony-based, the actual human interaction, plus the increase in the quality of the chatbots, has surely got to mean that ultimately it's going to shift. But it doesn't come back to, do you get a lesser service?
I think currently, I think you probably do. If it's a complicated issue, if it's a complicated ask, I think yes, I think you do get a lesser level of customer service. But like you've just said there, Pete, the advancements that we're making technologically, you look at Microsoft speech analytics, the text to speech, the workings in M365 or even in Azure, whatever it might be.
Cognitive services.
Yes, there we go. They are coming on leaps and bounds. I mean, 18, 24 months ago, yeah, they were all right. They weren't that great, but now they're awesome. They're absolutely fantastic. You can't tell that is a robotic voice. You can't tell. It just sounds like a person. And the fact that people are actually having conversations with artificial intelligence now and leaking it in the news and stuff like that, it's only going to go one way. So I think, yeah, it's going to get shed loads better further down the line. But I think currently at the moment in time, if it's a complex issue, no.
So here's a flip question of it then. Do we lower our expectations when we jump on a chat-based or a social media?
I would say yes, in my opinion. I lower my expectations, thinking, well, they can only answer something really simple.
Yeah. And it's something that's happened before. So you look at landline phones, back in the old day with the old
God. Yeah.
And you look basically right the way through. And when we went to mobile phones, your phone drops, calls, breaks up.
Yeah.
And you don't moan about it. You just go, "Oh, I'll call you back."
Yeah.
And you go again. You've set your expectations lower in favour of having a mobile device.
And then when it is good, you're elated. When something works really well, you're like, oh, that was actually, that worked. Perfect. I'll do that again.
But do we lower it? I guess, we lower it when we jump onto a chat thinking, it's the convenience of not having to talk to somebody, therefore I'll put up with a bit more nonsense.
Well, you know yourself. Yeah, well, you know yourself when you've got that question where you want to pose it. You know if it's going to be a quick and easy win in a chat bot, and you know for a fact of the matter is, right, okay, if I have to go through this process to get a telephone number to call someone, then that's fine. I know that's more than likely what's going to happen. I think where the contact center designers come in and the organizations that employ these people to come in and build them for them is make sure those vetting questions at the very start are short and snappy, and there's as few as possible that you can get there, because you don't want to go through a 20-stage process to then be presented with, oh, call this number.
Yes.
It means you've just done twice the work for half the
Exactly, that's it.
information. And
Yeah.
But I think, humans generally are quite negative, right? And we will always expect the worst from something
Well, we are
until
on this
proven
call, aren't
opposite.
we?
No, I mean, the human nature is to expect the worst and prepare for the worst. And then when you get something good out of that, you're quite happy about it. And next time you expect a little bit more. But then if it doesn't meet your standard of expectation, you're like, oh, that really is rubbish then, isn't it? So, I'll go back to ringing them. But I think generally we do have low expectations of most things, especially if it's something relatively new technology wise. And, chatbots, they've been around a little while now. 10 years, 15 years? Fair bit on things like Waterboard or Electric or Amazon or whatever. You can get a chatbot for most of those big companies, and have done for quite a while. But generally speaking, a lot of people will look at them and go, yeah, that's going to be a bit crap, isn't it? So I'm not going to necessarily want to do that. But I don't know whether we get a better service or not, or a lesser service.
But then
It
again, I
depends on
guess
the question.
being fair, you can put in a phone call and get through to an absolute donkey, and you can put through a phone call and get through to the most helpful agent that there is.
Yeah.
So I guess really, the chat bots, the automated, the actual chat bots, not just the chat services, the chat bots have got some way to come, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'll still search for a live chat session rather than pick up the phone. Maybe I'm lazy.
I'm a bit like that. No, because then I can do it while I'm working. It's what you said, Rich. You can just go on and go, oh, I've just got to sort something out. Right, I can do that whilst I'm still doing my work, and I can get that done a lot quicker. Therefore, I haven't got to worry about doing it after I finish work when I'm tired. And you can multitask your life a bit better, fitting your home life in whilst you're trying to do your job. But as for other customer to the business side of things, I don't know. Are they okay with the automation? Are they happy to have that? Is it something customers have said they want?
Yeah.
Are we giving them what they want?
I'll tell you what, because we're coming towards the end of the time. Just on the subject of automation, there's a brilliant book called The Future of Automation. Make sure you read the whole thing, not just the first few chapters, because otherwise you'll just give up.
Yeah,
exactly.
Automation fascinates me, and I think we do need more of it in the world, but it has to be done the right way.
Yeah, it's coming. It is coming. But
can I get something to read it for me, Pete?
Yeah, you can.
Get it transcribed.
There are other ebook services available.
Dear.
Brilliant. Right. Thank you both very, very much. I think that was a relatively successful first foray under the banner of NasStars. We will obviously be back for the next episode very soon. In the meantime, Krysia Jones, thank you very much. Sales Support Manager. Rich Tolley, Senior Solution Architect and Chief Insulter of Nations. And thank you very much, both. We will be back very soon.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Welcome to NasStars, the NasStar Podcast, bringing you the conversations you want to hear from the front line of tech news.